Okay, chapter 5 deals with public opinion, and all of this is part of the unit on the American political system. And so this unit pulls together some of the major aspects of the American political systems. We're going to talk about public opinion. We'll also talk about political parties, participation in elections, and then elections themselves. Um, and so we're going to be looking at how the American political system sort of comes together. So, what is public opinion? Public opinion is defined as the attitude citizens have about political issues, leaders, institutions, and events. Okay? Research suggests that public opinion does have a significant impact on public policy, and so how the citizenry views a policy will affect how lawmakers really put it into effect. And so public opinion is important. Sometimes public opinion is called attitudes. And sometimes um, these can be divided into a couple of different categories. You've got values, and then you have attitudes. And sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they do mean something a little bit different. Values are the basic principles that shape a person's opinion about political issues and events. These are the core of your basic orientation of politics, and they're usually very deeply rooted goals and aspirations for politics. And so oftentimes these are sort of shared. Even though all of us may have differing opinions on politics and public policies and things like that, we all can agree that liberty, equality of opportunity, democracy are all some goals and aspirations of government. And these are very long-standing, long-held values and beliefs in our nation's history. And then we look at attitudes, and these are sometimes called opinions, and these are our specific preferences on an issue. Attitudes may develop from a broad belief, but it is going to end up being a very specific attitude on a particular policy. Attitudes are what makes us all different politically, and these are our views on politics and government, and they can change, and they're sometimes very short-lived. But they are shaped by a number of different things, and some of the things that shape our opinions or our attitudes about government and public policy could be things like our race, our gender, our income, our age, religion, region, geographically where we are, and our emotions. And we all become politically socialized based upon these ideas and other ideas. Not necessarily just these. There could be other things that sort of politically socialize us. And so we're going to look more in depth at how we become politically socialized, how our opinions are shaped over time. And all of these things will shape our political ideologies. And so political ideologies. This can be defined as a coherent set of views on politics and government. And so in America, there are a number of different sets of views on politics and government. Um, we have things like liberalism, conservatism, libertarians, and socialists. And so we have these different sets of views on politics and government. Now, if we take each one and look at them individually, first of all, liberalism. Now, in Texas, liberalism is sort of a dirty word. Texas has a long history of what we refer to as conservatism. But in politics, we have really bastardized the meaning of the word liberalism. In political science, the term liberal, the classical definition of liberalism, is someone who favored individual initiative and was suspicious of governments and their ability to manage economics and social affairs. Okay? And so the true sense of liberalism isn't necessarily how we utilize it in American politics today to refer to typically the Democratic Party. It's actually a group of individuals who are very suspicious of government and don't feel like the government has the ability to manage economics and social affairs. We would refer in American society to these people as libertarians. But in fact, they are classic liberals. Liberal ideas that are significant are public schools, Social Security, Medicare, SNAP or food stamps, and other social programs. Understand that classical liberalism is not modern liberalism, okay? There is a difference. Modern liberalism is a social liberalism. And modern liberalism supports social and political reforms. It's about government intervention in the economy and progressive taxation. It's about workers' rights. It's about expansion of federal social programs. It's a very there are very vigorous efforts on behalf of the poor, the minorities, and women. They have greater concern for consumers and the environment. Modern liberals support abortion rights. They support rights for gays. They support arms control, aid for foreign nations and international organizations. And they are very suspicious of the use of military in foreign nations. So the modern liberals in America really deal with that list of ideas. They're going to be these individuals that are really all about social and political reform. If we look at conservatism, generally conservatives support the social and economic status quo. They don't want to really change how things are implemented already within society. They are suspicious of efforts to introduce new formula and economic arrangements. They believe that a large and powerful government is a threat to individual liberties. And ironically, this is a very classically liberal idea. But they oppose government regulations on the economy and the environment. Many support school prayer and traditional family arrangements. They are concerned more about law and order. And they feel like solutions to social problems should and will develop in the private sector, and it shouldn't necessarily be the government's job to come up with solutions to these social problems. They generally oppose same-sex marriage. They generally oppose abortion. They generally want to restrict immigration, and they want to utilize the military to maintain dominance on the world stage. And so understand that when we talk about liberalism and conservatism, and we talk about this list of things that they generally support, we're generalizing. Not every conservative believes this, not every liberal believes this, but we're generalizing. And by and large, it is very much in line with those particular views of politics and government. Libertarians, they argue that government interferes with the freedom of expression. They argue that the government interferes with the free market and society, and they should be limited to as few spheres of activity as possible. And really, the biggest sphere of influence that the government should be involved in is national defense. And so they really favor smaller government. And so they even go a little bit farther than perhaps the conservatives do. And then socialists, they argue in favor of government intervention to protect justice and to reduce economic inequality. And so if we were to plot the political ideologies on a continuum in America, this is really where they would fall. In the middle, you'd have what are known as moderates or centrists. Not really anybody who is liberal or conservative or, a Democrat or a Republican, but you just have people kind of the middle of the road individuals. And then to the right of this, you're going to have conservative Republicans. These are going to be those individuals that we talked about in the last slide that typically like the social and economic status quo. They're suspicious of new formula and economic arrangements. They do not believe in a large and powerful government, etc. To the left of this, you have what are known as the liberal Democrats, and that's going to be those liberals that we were talking about in the modern sense of the word. Not the classical liberals, but the modern sense of the word. Those who support social and political reforms, government intervention in the economy, etc., etc. To the left of conservative Republicans, if you went all the way to the right, this is where fascism would come into play. And if you went all the way to the left of liberal Democrats, this is where socialism will come into play. And so this is sort of the continuum of political ideologies. We're going to see people fall within these three triangles: liberal Democrats, moderates, and conservative Republicans. They're going to fall somewhere in the middle. You're not necessarily going to be a 100% moderate centrist middle of the road. You might lean Democratic, or you might lean Republican, conservative, but you're going to fall somewhere in this continuum. And socialism and fascism aren't really going to be things that we necessarily see too much in America. The farther left you are, the more you support the equality of outcome, right? You want to see things more equal. You want less restrictive laws over social behavior. And so things like gay rights and abortion and things of that nature, you want to be less restricted. To the right, you start to see, excuse me, the farther right you get, you're going to see equality of opportunity. Everybody should have the same access to opportunities to better themselves. And the farther you get in this direction, the more you support maintaining laws of traditional social behavior. And so we're going to see a differing approach to politics in America. And so this leads us to this idea of political socialization. How do we come to our conclusions on political opinions and political ideology? How do we come to our conclusions as to where we fall on this continuum? What makes us a liberal Democrat or a centrist moderate or a conservative Republican? What formulates our political ideologies? Well, this is going to be a process called political socialization. And it's defined as a process through which underlying political beliefs and values are going to be formed. We have many, many different agents of socialization, and this is one area of political science that I am extremely interested in because it deals with human beings and what makes human beings tick. And as a social scientist, I am very, very interested in knowing about different individuals, what makes them tick, how they form their opinions, the events and activities that have occurred within their life that have really shaped them to be the person that they are. And so political socialization is something that I'm very, very, very interested in because we all have a different story to tell. And so there are a lot of different agents of socialization. And one of the biggest shapers of our political ideology is our political socialization going to be our family and our social network. This is going to be our initial orientation of politics. Now, our parents normally don't spend a whole lot of time speaking to us about politics when we're children, but we pick up on their ideas from overhearing conversations and by viewing their actions. And so as children, we absorb a lot of our parents' viewpoint on government and politics. Political party preferences are initially acquired at home. And so if your parents are Democratic, you typically become a Democrat. If your parents are Republican, you typically become a Republican. And so these things are going to be ingrained in you early on in life. Now, these aren't hard and fast rules because we're all human beings and we all have different experiences in life that will shape us into humans as we grow and as we go through life and experience more and more things. But research suggests that by and large, your political party preference is going to be decided at home. And you're going to be essentially um, on a large scale, whatever it is that you were ingrained with at home, you will sort of keep throughout your lifetime. Another thing that really helps us to be socialized and to sort of formulate our political ideologies and to help us become politically socialized is our education and our levels of education. Education is often thought of as the great equalizer, and you don't really know me that well. We've only spent a few weeks together, and we've done it in an asynchronous format. But I truly believe that education is the great equalizer. Um, I am 34 years old. I have 2 degrees. I teach high school. I teach college. I have a wife. I have 2 children. We've just built a home. We have a very good life. But none of that would have been possible without the education that I received. I come from a very poor family. My parents divorced when I was 8 months old. Both of my parents were married 4 times. My mother went to prison when I was 2, and I was raised by my alcoholic father and my abusive stepmother. Um, I have 3 older siblings, and none of them went to college. Um, and so I decided that that's not the life that I wanted to have, and I went to school. And I believe that without this access to education and going on and getting a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, I would have sort of perpetuated that cycle of essentially lower socioeconomic and perhaps alcoholic tendencies that I grew up in. And so I think that I am a true believer that education is really the great equalizer within society. And it really is going to shape us into the individuals that we become. Um, there is a difference in formal education. Um, Differences in formal education are associated with a different political outlook. College attendees are exposed to other modes of thought. We're exposed to other people. You know, if you look around, even in our asynchronous format here, we've got a very diverse group of individuals in our class, and we're exposed to others' thoughts in our discussion boards, and we're supposed to respond to those in kind. Um, and going to college has allowed for this. It's allowed us to be exposed to other ideas. We're not sort of baked into one political thought or one set of ideas that our parents believed, and we've never been exposed to anything else. College allows for us to be out in the world and to be exposed to other things. And so higher levels of education do equate to higher levels of political participation. And so the more educated you become, the more politically involved you are more likely to be. And so there is some significant correlation there. Social groups and public opinion, really whoever you hang out with, they can shape your views on things. Um, I, as I said, again, I give you a background of my growing up. I was raised by an extremely conservative, interestingly enough, conservative father. But I had a friend whose family was extremely progressive, and so it opened my eyes to a whole new view of the world, and they really did shape some of my early views of politics. And so whoever you hang out with can really shape who you become. And social media has a huge impact on our political socialization today, for the better or for the worse. We all probably have that one great aunt out there who just continually posts every single thing that they see, even if it is not accurate, even if it is terrible information, but they see it as gospel essentially because it is on Facebook, or I don't really know that my great aunt is on anything else other than Facebook, but um, social media does have a huge impact on our political socialization. It can really reinforce the ideas that we already believe, or it can perhaps change some of the beliefs that we do hold. And so those are going to be some very significant um, uh, things that will impact our political socialization. Race and ethnicity are really going to determine how we view politics and how we create our political beliefs. Um, in case you don't know, there is a difference between race and ethnicity. And race, this is your physical characteristics. This is your skin color, your features, your hair, your eye color. You typically only have one race, even if you're mixed raced. And your ethnicity, this is your cultural factors. This is your nationality, your regional culture, your ancestry, your language, and you can have multiple ethnicities. You can have multiple nationalities. And so your skin color has a huge effect on how you see government and politics. We live in a nation that has not demonstrated equality in regards to races throughout our history. And so the way that a white man looks at the world is going to be significantly different than the way that a Latino or an African American man looks at the world, or a Latina or African American woman looks at the world. And so it's really going to have a huge impact on how we see the government and how we see politics, and whether or not we feel like we are represented by our government, by our politics. Gender is a huge factor in socializing us politically, and there is a gender gap. There's a tendency of men and women's positions to differ. Women are more likely to vote for Democratic candidates and support more social programs, whereas men are more likely to vote for a Republican candidate and support more military or business programs. Now, as I said before, these aren't hard and fast rules. There are obviously exceptions to the rule, and people are going to fall, different places on that continuum. But the gender overall, research does suggest that there is a gender gap between men and women and how they vote, and what items really push them to vote in one political party or another. Party affiliation is really going to be a significant agent of socialization as well. Excuse me. And this is loyalty to one party over another. One of the biggest examples of this would be Roosevelt Democrats after the Depression. There were people who would vote Democrat for the rest of their lives, even if they lived another 80 years following Roosevelt's terms in office, because they saw him as a savior of America out of the Great Depression. And so as a loyal individual, they voted Democratic for the rest of their lives because they were loyal to Roosevelt. And then there's this elite versus the common folks, and this is the idea that political elites really set the tone and the policy, and those who align themselves with certain groups of political elites simply agree with these policies. And sometimes, as common people, we get busy and we don't have time to really examine some of these policies, and we just blindly follow these policies that have been set by someone else, someone within the political party, some elected official perhaps, or some wealthy individual. We simply support something because we're supposed to as a Democrat, or we're supposed to as a Republican, when we don't really critically look at what policies we're really supporting. We're just going with it because we're a Republican or we're a Democrat. Political environment is a huge agent of socialization as well. And so whatever is going on in the world politically, this is going to shape how we view government and how we view our politics. And so these are going to be things that we cannot change, but we must adapt to. And so if we look at the baby boomers, they're going to be very suspicious of foreign wars because, they're going to come of age during the Vietnam War era, where it was extremely unpopular. The 9/11 generation, war on terrorism is a fact of life. It's not even something that's even up for debate. It's not something that we can change, but you know, we sort of just have to adapt to this war on terrorism that is going on, and so our political beliefs are really going to be shaped, with this war on terrorism as a backdrop, and it may, bring together some ideas that we might not necessarily would have supported had we not come of age during this time of American war on terrorism. And then socioeconomic status is another agent of I am so sorry for all the coughing. I apologize. But where we fall in regards to how much money we make, this really goes hand in hand with education, because statistically, the more education you get, the higher wages you earn, and so it can go hand in hand with that. But people in the lower socioeconomic brackets are going to vote based on different ideas than the wealthy people, because what the lower socioeconomic people need is not going to fall in line with what the richer people are going to need. And so political socialization is going to be, there's going to be tons of things that really socialize us as individuals, and it's going to start from a very early age when we are small children at home. And so we're going to stop here with political socialization, and we'll come back and we'll start looking at the American political system and looking at political parties' participation and elections in that system. So I'll see you in the next lecture.